All right, next one. We've identified 2 stories, in some cases 1, or in some cases nothing, but you're going to eventually. You can use to draw them in. How can you use those stories in your chosen forms of communication from above? When should you use those stories and others along with pictures? Identify 3 upcoming outreaches. You can use one of these stories as a technique to draw in new volunteers, prospects, or solicit donations, maybe through a monthly or an annual letter. So do you currently have upcoming outreaches where you're soliciting people for an event, or you're recruiting new volunteers, or you're looking for sponsors for a program, or just donors in general? Do you have anything on the calendar that you could incorporate a story into, like we talked about before with the major nonprofits? And if not, that's okay, because we're going to get to that later. And then I'm going to move along for the last one. Who can you rely on to help you carry the messages out? List the names of 5 people who you can teach the storytelling skill to them and ask them to help you by advocating in the community on your behalf. Be sure they're not current staff members. You want to build your army to speak on your behalf. So pick 5 new people who currently don't volunteer or support you in any other way.
So I just wrote down Donna, Bonnie. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, no, that's not right.
No, people that you know that are very connected to the church, but you think have the capacity for maybe taking the next step.
I don't have a clue until I talk to them.
Okay, that's fine. Do you know who you're going to talk to?
Probably my closest friends first.
Okay, so put their names on there, George.
I don't even know who they are.
You don't know who Pat.
And Lois, your new best friend.
Right?
Put him down, and he'll put me down.
And if you don't have 5 people right now, 2 or 3, you might think of somebody when you get home, or tomorrow after you leave church. You may, oh, that's somebody that I could add to my list. You want to start expanding the pool of people who support the church, the program, everything that you are passionate about. Because like I said before, this is not a one-man show. You cannot do it, not even 2 or 3 people. It takes a lot of people to achieve success when it comes to the types of programs that you all are providing. And if you think you can do it by yourself, I'd love to see it happen. But good luck with that. The other thing to think about is when somebody comes up to you, for example, Carol, after you give a service, somebody comes up and they are just telling you how great it is, how much they love the church, you know, just going on and on and on about the program. The food pantry is amazing. The back to school program is fantastic. The healthcare program is fantastic. We call those referral moments in the business world. Strike while the iron is hot. So when somebody is saying how great it is that what you're doing and the impact that it has, you want to take that moment to say, you know what, I'm so glad that you think that, because I feel the same way. Who do you know who would love to support the community, who would love to be a part of this program? We need a volunteer for communicating with our Spanish-speaking constituents. Who do you know who speaks Spanish who would like to be a part of this program? You don't want to say, you know what, we really need help. Can you send me the names of 5 people and their phone numbers so I can reach out to them? Nobody's going to do that. They're not going to open up their address book and go, here you go, how about it? But if you say it in the way, exactly as I'm saying, who do you know who would want to be a part of this, who would get a thrill out of watching these kids get their backpacks, who would be enthusiastically supportive of helping people get the health care that they need? People are going to start thinking, gosh, you know what? Sarah just told me the other day she's looking for a volunteer job, and I think this would be a great program for her. So I'm going to put you in touch with her. People start thinking through because people want to help people. Yes, Donna.
I guess just to say, especially if children are involved, I think it's really important that you do some kind of background check and
It's
know
required.
who you're, yes, and who you're bringing into your programs generally, especially with children. So I know that might be a good time, but it's really.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you all recruit your volunteers, but I'm assuming, like most organizations, you actually do an interview first to make sure that they meet the criteria, and then you do some sort of volunteer training or initiation or something like that. And then,
I think it's not necessarily.
no, you just take anybody that's willing to help.
Depends on the congregation.
Well, sometimes you can't get rid of them either.
Any warm body.
That's the biggest problem. Is people, sometimes you get people, very needy people to come, and they introduce themselves, and you own them from there on in.
Right.
And it takes a stick of dynamite to get them out. I mean, that's a real problem because they can do a lot of disruption to your church.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually, what you were saying, I think if churches introduce that whole volunteer concept of, I mean, sometimes you have longtime members, but if you get someone new who showed up at church a couple times and then says, oh gosh, I'd love to help with that, but especially when you're putting out a call that we need volunteers, but you can interview them and have them fill out background information about themselves.
But the director's job to keep watch of those things, I mean, to make sure that those things been done before they get someone within the parish, because they think the church is one family, kumbaya, I mean, people will come and help. So, I mean, Steve, as you know, that, we got like safeguarding God-children, safeguarding God people, and to make sure that, the people get screened and, get, if they're still involved.
They don't always do that, Father Joseph.
Okay, so,
I mean, they should, but, sometimes they're so glad to have a new warm body, at least initially.
But sometimes when you're in despair, this is when you get hurt. I mean, when you're in despair, you want someone so bad, and this is when they are at the door, and they know that you want, and they themselves, they look at their prey, and they come in, but, as, please, they always, do your job, do your work, I mean, do your homework, I mean, someone's coming, maybe becoming very nice, but,
there's a fine line, and I think everybody's touched on it, and that is that while so many of you are really needy for volunteers, you're willing to take anybody that walks in the door because it's a warm body, but on the other hand, that can backfire on you immediately. So if you don't currently have a volunteer management system where you are meeting with each person before they take on the role, getting them to fill out a piece of paper that identifies what the responsibilities are, their commitment to the program or to the church, whatever that is, and then obviously doing the background check. But also somewhere in there, they're signing a piece of paper that says that at any point they can be dismissed without discussion if their behavior, whatever, is inappropriate.
Just to add, maybe, if I can, in my parish ministry before I started doing this work, they're coming into a church setting, so it's challenging because people come in and we, as clergy, serve them pastorally, and they're part of the community, but they could also be really crazy in terms of, volunteering. So it's a little more challenging in terms of dismissing, or, I mean, I know I've had my share of, like, interventions and, like, why don't you try this church, and then getting a call from the rector saying, thanks a lot, and that type of thing. But I think it's a hard, it's a real balance.
Well, maybe there should be some sort of trial stage, like I was saying before they become a volunteer, ask them to come and observe, so you can observe them and, interact in that way. But the other thing is, like, for example, with Horses and the Handicapped, we had a program where we could take kids who had been in trouble with the law, but they couldn't have had a felony or battery or anything like that. But if they were, caught skipping school and things like that, they could come in. But the parents treated us like we were daycare. And they would just drop their kids off, and then the kids would just sit like a bump on a log in the corner and not participate, because at least they were getting their hours, but they weren't doing anything, and they would have an attitude. And we had one kid we had a porta potty up for an event, and he was in there smoking marijuana. We had two kids that we found in the tack room doing things that they shouldn't have been doing together. I mean, it gets crazy when you become the free-for-all, and the parents just throw the kids at you, and it's like, no. It's a privilege to be here, and you need to treat it as such. And if you're not committed to us the way we're going to commit to you, then you're not allowed to be here. So you have,
And the adults too. I mean,
Exactly.
If they're part of their probation or whatever,
Right.
and they're calling, and you think they're just volunteering because they want to be part of the church, I mean, it's all.
It's the member aspect for somebody who's a member, and I think I had to do one that just said, you know, I don't think this task or assignment is the right fit, so why don't we take some time and look for
something else, right,
But you're welcome to continue, you know, please, you're welcome to continue to worship here.
right.
And then you
Yeah,
just.
it's all about communication. One more question and then we should move forward.
Okay, just a quick question for clergy. I know before we hire anybody, the diocesan office will do a background check. Is this an extreme if we're having volunteers? Do you think they'll do it for us any cheaper, or so that it's going to be the same $55 per person?
It's not, I don't think you need to do a background check like that. I think it's more of a, I think it's a lot of common sense. I mean, you know, they've got to take safeguarding God's people, safeguarding God's children, and then you have the Title III, which is the anti-racism training. I mean, those are the things that all clergy have to do and staff. But for the people coming in off the street, I think that you need to, you know, just have maybe a committee or a couple of people who would just, you know, work with these new people to just see, you know, why are they there? I mean, that's the question. I mean, you know, are they there to serve others or are they there to be served?
Okay.
Because you can find out pretty fast if a person's needy. And, you know, it doesn't take much to find out that the person's there because they have this horrible need that it's not horrible, but it's a need that they need to be, for whatever reason. And it just does not serve our purposes well.
We did more depending on the role. If they were just coming in and serving, like if we just come in, we didn't do. But if it was an instrumental position in a program, we ran a background check, and actually anybody who was working with children.
Has to, it's
Yeah,
required.
the church is required.
Yeah, it's state law.
But I'm just doing adults.
Yes.
So, okay.
Excellent. Okay.